questions until then. Okay, so we finally up here. Finally up here, and we're broadcasting. Okay, so today, what we're going to do is we're going to get up to speed on web technologies that are used to interact with servers and to create web apps, because that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the course. We're going to use other people's servers and some of our own servers to give us content, but we still have to write the application that will utilize this content. And so we're going to learn about that. I'll talk about HTML for a few minutes. Okay, HTML really should be something that, I'm trip over this. I'm sure. Should be something that you're at least familiar with. And then we'll talk about how we can make our web pages dynamic. And today we're probably gonna leave it at that. Okay, we are one. You know, if you look at the syllabus, we're one meeting time ahead anyway. So we'll talk about JavaScript, and we'll spend a lot of time doing that, demonstrating the techniques, and then we'll get into the mapping APIs probably on Monday, unless we have, unless I get further than I think I'm going to get. So as I do this, I'd like you to follow along. I'll try to go slowly, you know, if you think that really you don't need to follow along, or you think perhaps it would be better to go back and look at the video and follow along on your own pace, that's fine. Okay, but feel free to ask questions as I proceed, and we'll take it from there. Now, I did prepare a reading, okay, but the reading is not really going to contain much of the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. It's not going to contain any directions. It gives you an overview, a broad overview of the technology, and you're going to actually have to dive in and do it. Now, there are so many resources out there on the internet. Okay, the internet is kind of going to be your book for this portion of the course. Okay, so many resources on the internet to help you when you're stuck creating a web application, and I'll help you. I'll steer you to those places. But it would be silly for me to duplicate other people, all that material that exists on the internet. Okay, if you felt, hey, you need to buy a book on a particular subject, you could buy a book. But I haven't bought a book on a technology in a long time. You know, I buy books for other reasons, even books that contain information on research or periodicals. But as far as how to use a technology, there's plenty of free resources out there that help us to do that. And if you remember way back at the beginning of the course, I did talk about that and introduce two items at the beginning of the course, two resources for you. Those are by no means exhaustive. Those are just two resources. One was on HTML, one was on JavaScript. I'm going to draw from those a little bit today as I introduce these concepts. And so if you already went through those tutorials, like I told you to do, that's great. And you know, you may not need to follow along in those cases, but you know, if you feel like you can benefit from learning and you can benefit from asking a few questions, go ahead as I talk through it. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is creating an HTML page and then demonstrating how we can make it dynamic. Okay. Right now, we're not actually going to use any servers to begin with. We're just talking about creating our HTML page. And there are different ways to create HTML pages, and sometimes it helps to use some sort of a what you see is what you get editor to create the framework of an HTML page. But I'm going to skip that so that you can understand what's actually going on when you make a web page. Okay, so I realize that many of you will probably have this this background, but for those of you who don't, the first thing that I'm going to do is go to this tutorial page that I asked you to go to and just copy and paste this HTML example. And we're just gonna build off of this. We're not gonna spend too much time talking about HTML, but we're gonna build off of that example. And I'm gonna paste that into a program. Yeah. Okay. You don't see the screen at all? No. Okay. What about the, don't you usually get the screen, see the ceiling right now. Don't you usually get the, oh yeah. Don't you usually get just my computer screen on one of your screens? Okay. See if that works to turn on the big screen. And that might be helpful, particularly for today. Now on the TV, it looks like you can see both. So the address of the place that I went to is w3schools.com. w3schools.com. And then I'm going to open up a program that is kind of like Notepad. Is Notepad++ installed on all these machines? Is it? Do you know if Notepad++ is installed on your machines down there? It's not critical. You can use regular Notepad and it would be fine. It won't color the text for you, but it'll work almost as well. So just regular old Notepad should be sufficient. Okay. My examples, I'm going to use Notepad++. I tentatively next Thursday, if everything falls into place, I will be on the coast anyway, and so I'll come by and I'll teach from there. So a week from today, but not everything's finalized. So I'll know for sure by next Tuesday, but next Thursday we'll probably be on the coast, and that way I can go in and install things on these machines. Did Heather walk out? Okay. Heather did say that she might be able to install stuff on the computers, and I could give her instructions on how to do that. But in any case, everybody should get to the position that wants to get to the position where you have either Notepad or Notepad++ open on your screen like this. And then just paste in the text of the tutorial body there. So we've got our text there. We're going to create our web page. All right, and the first thing that we're going to do is save this page somewhere on our disk. Okay, you can save it wherever you want. I'm going to save it as, I have a directory for this course called WM, and I'm going to create a new folder in here, and I'm going to call that new folder, I'll just call it web, and then inside of web, I'm going to create another new folder and call this week 1, and then inside of week 1, I'll name this page, I'll name it example 1. I'm going to be changing the examples, so maybe I'll save it different times, but I'm going to you can just go to all types and then just call it example1.html. On a Windows machine, if you name it .html, by default, it will open up in a web browser, which is what we want, okay? So we're gonna put that there. We've got our example1.html. I'm gonna save that. And if you're using Notepad++, like I said, it'll colorize things for you. But it's just kind of helping you know where tags start and end. Right? They are your tags. HTML, I wouldn't really say it has the concept of reserved words. In other words, you can still write the word. Well, you can see the word HTML exists outside of this tag, so it's not necessarily reserved in the sense that you can't use it in other places in your code. All right, let's look at what this HTML page created. Okay. So if I go on the disk where I saved my file, which in my case was this PC, then C, then courses, then web mapping, then web, week 1, way down here. If I double click on, actually I'm not gonna double click, I'm gonna right click and say open with Google Chrome. The reason why I open it with Google Chrome is that Google Chrome and Firefox with the Firebug extension, to me, have the best developer tools. The best, and we'll see what developer tools mean in a little while, but they have the best resources for updating and changing your code on the fly and inspecting what the values are. Okay, so what's happened is that this HTML page created this this example. Everybody wants to have success in getting that far. All right. So we've created a very simple HTML page, and you can see that things like the title don't appear on the page; they actually appear up here. These are called tags. Okay. Every tag opens and closes. Whether you realize it or not, not all formats are text where you can read them, but almost all formats, almost all data formats for text, including Microsoft Word, use a very similar structure. Okay? The data may not actually be stored as text, it may be stored as binary, but every item on a page is tagged as to its format, what it looks like. So HTML is no different. It's tagged as to its format, and you can add elements to your page to make it have all the different elements that you can think of, you can imagine on a web page. Right? I am not going to cover every tag out there. You can go continue through the tutorials to do that. To see, like, what if you have a question? Hey, I want to put a radio button on my page. What's a radio button, by the way? You know what I'm talking about when I say radio button? What's a radio button do? What's that? Yeah, it selects from a list. Okay, how is that different than a checkbox? You can check multiple boxes, but you can only select one element from a list in a radio group, right? So let's say we're making a web page for a web mapping application, and we wanted the user to be able to turn on different layers. Okay? Might be the best option to use a checkbox rather than a radio button. However, let's say our specific application was allowing the user to view through time a series of layers where we had, you know, let's say we're looking at sea level rise, and we had 2010, 2020, 2050. These were models. Layer, and they didn't see any change. Well, that's because maybe the 2050 layer was on in the background the whole time. So it has the largest extent. So you could keep turning off the 2010, on and off the 2010 layer, and nothing would happen because it was on the, it had a smaller extent than the others. Just turn down my phone there. Okay. So yeah, there's lots of different things. Speaking of those, what we're going to do here is add a button to a page. Okay? So the code to do that, we can go. Google is a good thing to use. Okay, so I'm gonna, or any search engine, I'm gonna type in HTML button code. How do I do this? Well, the first link is actually to this tutorial that I've already shown you. And here is an example of how we can add a button. So we copy, Control-C, and we paste that into our page and press Control-S. Control-S or save, however you want to do it. You can press the save button right here. You can press File, Save. Now go back over to the web page and just hit refresh. In doing that, you'll see that you added a button to the page. And we can make this button to do all sorts of things eventually. Okay? Button could add a layer to a map. It could hide a layer on a map. It could be combined with an input. Like, so the user might have a space to enter a value, and you could press that button, and entering that value may cause some action to occur. That's what we're going to get to today, right? So I've created my little click me button, and it doesn't do anything so far. It's just a button on the page. And in fact, I'm going to add, I'll type in HTML input text. Oops. I also get the input tag there. And this is kind of a lot of information there. It's a lot of code. I'm going to tell you right now that this code actually creates a form. A form is a group of these controls, and it has multiple inputs. I only really want one input on my page for now, so I'm just going to copy the part of that, Control-C. Part of this is going to create a simple text input and put this right before my button. And hit Control-S. I'm going to hit refresh. So now I've got some value, and I've got a click me. Okay. I've got some ways to interact with the user. Now I haven't actually made my web page do anything, but I do have the ability to start collecting information from the user of my web page. So I've got an input, I've got a button, I've got two different elements on my page. And one more thing that I want to talk about before I get into actual JavaScript is that I can style elements on my page. Okay, so and again, you should go look at the tutorial for a full version of this. Basically, if you want to make your web page look better, learn more about this. Okay, I can take the elements that are here, and I can style them. I'll go back to here for a second. I can style them using this concept of CSS. So this CSS right here, the CSS code, will allow me to style anything that has a P tag. So this element here is a paragraph, and if I want to style that, I can put this code in there. Now to do that, I do have to add another tag, because the HTML won't know that this is style information unless I tell it. See how it says style? Okay, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to open this style. I'm going to paste the style information that I just had, and then close it. Style. So that's how I can adjust the style. And what this is saying is that any paragraph tag, I don't want it to use the normal style. I want it to use this style. So now if I save that and I go back over to my page and hit refresh, let's see that I messed up somehow. I didn't spell style right. Should have copied and pasted. Huh. All right, there we go. And it didn't change too differently. Okay, it wasn't a drastic change. So maybe I'll add a different style. Maybe I'll also change the color. I'll make it red. Pretty sure that'll work. HTML does recognize a few standard color words. Okay. So I just made that red. And there's the code again. What are the things that you can control in the style? Okay, you can control the color, you control the size, you can control the shape, you can control like the dimensions, I mean. You can control the position. You can move things around. You can give things, everything with a certain tag, you could give a indentation on the page. Okay. We're not going to get too fancy. I mean, you're welcome to get as fancy as you want, okay? But we're mainly going to be concerned with creating web maps, and later you can become an awesome web designer. Or you can become an awesome web designer by finding resources on the internet to do that. And we're going to learn a few more of those resources, but we're really going to be focused on how to make the map aspects work. So that is that's a style. Now, kind of a generic tab. Well, there's two generic tags that you can use to tag anything that you want, any text that you want, and they aren't. So this tag called H1 stands for heading 1. This P stands for paragraph. What if you don't want to use those labels for your page? Well, there's two kind of generic labels. One is called div, and the other one is called span. Okay, you'll use those a fair bit. These two tags can be placed wherever you want to place text, and because you can, through styling, you can control where they go, and you can control how big they are. You can really use these to create any sort of element that you want. In fact, later I'll show you. Right now we have a regular button right here. What if I didn't like the way that button looked? Well, I could create a special element, maybe from a picture, or I could just draw the element using some, in newer browsers, you can actually draw elements using either Canvas or SVG. And then I could, instead of having the user click on a button, I could say, okay, well, if the user clicks this thing, whatever it is, my own new button, then do something. All right. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. So I'm going to say here, this is my div. Divs can contain everything, but they can also contain text. We could also have them contain images. You'll actually, whether we get to it today or next time we meet, you have to give your map a div. Okay, the map has to be a division, a thing on the page. And so when you create your map, you'll give it a div. All right, so I saved that. The other thing that I want to do is introduce the concept. There's two concepts that I want to introduce, and that is that every element on your page can have a few different attributes, but the ones that are going to be important for us today and throughout this course are that every element can have a class and an ID. Maybe I should have said those in the other order. Every element can have an ID on the page, and every element on the page can have a class. You can use those to find your elements or to reference them. Okay, so I'm going to call this, I'm going to say ID equals, and then I'm going to give it an ID. I'm going to call this div1. Okay. And then I'm going to have an ID for span. Whoops, messed up. And I'm going to call this ID equals, by the way, JavaScript doesn't care if you use single quotes or double quotes. It cares whether you're, not JavaScript, HTML. It cares whether you're consistent. So if you use single quotes to open, you have to close with single quotes and vice versa. Okay, ID equals, I'll just call this span1. Now I'm going to also assign a class, and I'm going to say my class is equal to, I'm going to call this, you know, my text, I guess, my text. Class equals my text, right? So far this isn't going to do anything. Like if I go over here and I hit refresh, it's just going to show me my new divs. Notice that the default behavior of a div is to put a carriage return, to force a carriage return at the end, whereas the default behavior of a span is not to put a carriage return. So that's actually one of the primary reasons, or the primary differences between the two. So span is kind of for inline, like if you wanted to change, if you want to write, my name is George, I'm 40 years old, which is true, then you could write, and you wanted George to be bold, you could create a span just around the word George and give it a different CSS. Like you could call it, you could give it a different style just for the word George. Like if you want to make it bold or big, or you want to make it really tiny. My name is George. Then you could do that. Okay. Maybe I'll demonstrate that. All right, so let's style this information. Now we could come up here and we could create, I'm just going to copy and paste this style for a second. Control C, Control V. We could do this and just say divs are going to all have this thing. Of course, that'll work. So now div is red. That's not what I want to show you, okay? Because what if we only want to change one div, or what if we only want to change one type of div? That's what the ID and the class are for, okay? So if I want to change just one div, in other words, if I want to change an ID, then I put a pound, a hashtag, whatever you want to call it, $, and then type the name of the ID. So I say div1. And just for fun, I'm going to make this say 10 and this say blue. Okay. Save it again. So now I've made my div1. I've said, okay, it's going to be smaller text and it's going to be blue text. So go back over here, I hit refresh, and you can see the smaller text. Okay. So that's how you apply a style to just one ID. So that ID has that style. All right, so the other thing I want to show is how do I apply a style to just a single class? I mean, not to just a single class, to a whole class. Well, I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to call my class dot. I put a dot to say this is for a class. Dot my text. And I'm going to delete everything here and say everything that is my text is going to be, well, here, I'm going to change the font size because green works, I guess. Green. There we go. Okay, so all my text is going to be green. I'm going to hit Control S for saving it, and I'm going to refresh. Okay. So you see that that turned out green, but this is my div didn't change at all, even though it has the same class. Well, that's because we gave it an ID specific style. Okay? If we want it to be affected, we have to remove this style. Control X, Control S, and hit refresh. And now they'll both have that class-based style. Okay? So even though these are two separate elements, they're both being influenced by this. Let's see what happens if we take out the color blue. I take out the color blue, and I'm going to refresh this. Now you can see what happened, basically. Can anybody explain what happened? And why? Why is this is my div small? Looking at the styles here. Right, because it has an ID tag that makes it small. And why is it green now? Because its class tells it to be green, exactly. And so because we don't have a conflict between any of the styles in here and the styles in here, they both get applied. If there's a conflict though, most browsers will do one of two things. Most browsers will actually do what this browser did, and it will take the ID specific style as the rule. Some browsers will just take the last style applied as the right style. So when I put this in, this one says, this is my div blue. It's not the last style applied. So this browser must be applying the style because it's a more specific style, so it's going to apply that. Sometimes you can force a browser to do this. Let's see if this works. It might not. No, that doesn't work. Sometimes that'll work. Like sometimes you can actually force a change to be made by elevating the importance, but it didn't work. So in any case, styles can become pretty, if you have a lot of styles, they can become pretty complicated. And sometimes you'll be like, why is that blue when I told it that everything that's my text is green? Why is that? And you just get frustrated. Like here, it's pretty obvious because we only have 3 styles. But what if you have like 100 styles and you can't remember which style is making that blue? Well, this is where you get into the developer tools. You can go in here and you go to more tools, developer tools, and sometimes this will pop up on the bottom, by the way, and sometimes it pops up here on the right like it did. You can select an element. If you go under elements, you can select a certain element. Like I'm going to select the span that's blue because I'm wondering why it's blue. So I'm going to hit it, and this tells me, this shows me all the, not all the styles actually. In fact, this is only the styles that apply to this particular element. And I can see right here that the reason why it shows up as blue is because it's been tagged as blue in this one. So then I could make it whatever change I want. And you can even update it on the fly. This won't change your website permanently, but you could say, okay, well, if I get rid of that, what'll happen? It'll make it green. I can toggle back and forth. You can see that the ones with strike through are the styles that apply to that particular element, but they're being ignored because there's another style that supersedes it. So that's how that works. So that's HTML and CSS in a nutshell, a very small nutshell. Okay, but you should now be able to place elements on a page, and that's what's really going to be important for this course. Eventually, you're going to say, well, I want to create a beautiful web page. Right? Well, even in the real world, there's often a separation between the guys creating the web maps and the guys that are creating the web page, making it beautiful. And so sometimes it's more important to create a prototype, get it working, show how this web page is going to work, and then get advice from a designer on making the page look like you want it to look. But I will point out some design elements because they are important throughout the course. Okay, but for now, we're going to stick with this very basic introduction. But I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go through and look at some more complex examples as you go through those tutorials. All right, on to JavaScript. So JavaScript is the only way we can get this page to change. So right now, the only way I can get the page to change is to change the HTML code and then hit the update button, or the refresh button, as some people call it. So if I want this page to do anything interesting, like find out where a particular location on the earth is, or find out or show a map or anything. Well, not show a map, because you could show a static map. We didn't actually cover images yet, but we could include a map. But if you wanted to do anything on this page, you need to use JavaScript. JavaScript makes the page dynamic. Okay? Just really quickly, the IMG tag allows you to put an image. Let's put an image on the page. So you say IMG, and then you say SRC equals, and then you specify the source of your image. Now, the source of your image can be all sorts of things. It could be another location on the internet. I'll show you that here real quick. Or it could be something that is in the same directory as your page. So let's find a good image. Oops. That's an old. Here's the picture of me. I'm going to view this image. So this is the URL to that image right now. Okay. So I'm going to hit Control-C, and I paste that. You can find any image you want. You don't have to use me. You can paste that in there, and then you have to close your tag. Now, an image tag is actually one of those tags where you don't need to open and close it. By the way, this is called a tag. The things that are in red are attributes of that tag. So I've got image, SRC equals, and then that that URL to my image. So I'm going to go back to this page, refresh it. Did I save it? No. Now I saved it. Refresh it. Now we have that page. I can, there's some other attributes. I could say width equals 100 because maybe I don't like my face so big. Save it, there we go. Width equals 100. So that's a picture that already exists on the internet. What if I have a picture that I want to show in my own directory? Well, let's see if I have any pictures already. Actually, maybe I shouldn't just are these actual pictures? I don't know. Okay. Now those are videos. Let's just find another picture. USM. So here's the university's logo. I'm going to right click. Instead of saying open the image, I'm just going to say save image as. Okay. And I'm going to save this in the same directory where I've been operating on. So that's courses, web mapping. That's my OneDrive. Sorry, my local drive. C courses, web mapping, not data. Web, week 1. I'm going to save it in here. I'm going to call it USM. USM. It's going to save it. Now, if I look at it on disk, I can see that I have my, this is my HTML code, and this is my USM image. So now I can go back, and I can put that image on the page. So I'm just going to copy and paste that image, and I'm going to say that usm.jpg that's the URL. Why is that the URL? The URL is simply the name of the file. The reason that I can do that is I can say that this JPEG is located in the same directory as this HTML page. I could say, what if I wanted to say it's located one directory down? Like let's say it was located in a folder called images. I could do that. In fact, I'll demonstrate that. So I've got this, right? I'm going to refresh, and there's the USM picture located right next to me. I could, I decide, hey, I want to organize this a little better, so I have an images/USM JPEG, and I have to create a new folder, call it images, and put it inside of that directory. So now, if I go there, same, it'll work. All right, so that's how we deal with images. So we've got our images, we've got some text, we've got some spans. Is there any other HTML elements that I left out? Oh, there's one more that I want to do. Okay. The other one is called an anchor tag, and it's just an A. A equals href. No, href equals, and then you can put a URL. I'll just put www.usm.edu. And an href tag will take you to another URL. And you do have to close an an anchor tag. And you should put some text in there, say USM. So like this, where you've got href equals www.usm.edu. I'm going to refresh this, and now I've got a hyperlink, is what they call that. But it's an anchor tag. If I hit this, it will take me to, oh, I have to type in HTTP. The reason I have to do that is because it thinks that www.usm.edu should be located in the same directory if I don't put that there. That's what happened. Now I refresh this, hit the button, and I go to usm.edu. All right. You can nest tags. This will be the last tag thing I do before I go back to JavaScript. I already have the image there. So I want people to just be able to hit the image of USM and they'll go to USM. Okay. So now when they hit this guy, they go to USM. And that's because I put the href around the image tag. I mean, sorry, the anchor href around the image tag. I could have another link around the picture of me, okay, that took you to my Google page, or it opened up an email window or whatnot. Okay. All right, so that is our web page. That's our simple web page that we're gonna start learning JavaScript from. I'm going to delete this one right here that says this is a paragraph. Actually, what I'll do before I do that is I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Example 2. So now I have that one. I'll zip these up and post it online. Okay, so you'll be able to see this. So before I go, I'm going to delete the paragraph. I'm going to delete the style that pertains to paragraph. And see what that looks like. I have to change this to example 2. So now it just says this is a heading. It's got a picture of me. It's got a picture of the university logo, and then it has the two elements. All right. So to learn about JavaScript, we need to learn a few concepts, and I outlined these concepts in the reading. Okay, but we're gonna show how they're actually implemented and used in JavaScript. First of all, if you want your web page to do anything, you have to write some JavaScript code. Okay, JavaScript is a programming language. Okay, it's not a programming language that's meant for writing desktop applications. It's a programming language that's meant to interact with elements on an HTML page. That's its purpose. Okay? It interacts with elements on an HTML page. That's why it was created. And the way that JavaScript works is that when the page is loaded, it will attempt to take your JavaScript and run your JavaScript right there, right then. Okay? JavaScript falls into a class of languages called an interpreted language. Interpreted languages are different than compiled languages. Interpreted languages are run and turned into computer code right as they're executed. So they're executed from text files. Okay? The spatial programming course that we teach in this course uses another interpreted language called Python. So before these programs are run, they are eventually turned into ones and zeros that the computer understands, but not until right when the program is run. Okay. That's different than like most files where you see the .exe extension. Most of those files have already been turned into ones and zeros. The computer's already compiled them. All right. So to create a script, we underneath the body, we can do this really anywhere on the page. I'm going to do it underneath the body for now. We type in the word script, and then we close that tag. Script. So we have script open, script closed. So one reason to put the script at the bottom of the page, and there are ways around this, but one reason to put it at the bottom of the page is that it's already created the elements on your page before it gets to the script. So if you want to interact with the elements on the page, you can do that immediately in your code. Now there's ways around that. In fact, lots of people like to put the script up at the top. So what they do is they wait for a certain event. An event is one of the things that we're going to talk about. An event to occur in the loading of the page in order, they wait for that to happen before they start interacting with the elements on the page. Okay, but for now, until we learn more about events, we're going to put our code at the bottom of the page underneath the elements. Okay, so we're going to learn about variables. Okay. So a variable is simply a named thing that stores a value. And a value can be anything. In JavaScript, it's most often either a number or some text. Okay? So I could say name equals George. So I've set a variable called name equal to George. So now I can reference that name in other places. Okay? Now in JavaScript, if you want your variable to be accessible universally anywhere in your other code, this will probably make more sense when we start talking about functions here in a second. Anywhere in your other code, you should actually type the word var in front of it. Makes it a global variable. So now, name George is a global variable. All right. All right. So big deal. How do I know that this is doing anything? I'm going to introduce you to a built-in function. It's called alert. Alert is kind of like showing a message. So I'm going to say alert name. Okay. So this is a simple function that actually just creates a pop-up and shows it to you. All right. So I'm going to refresh the page, and it's going to say JavaScript alert George. Okay. So in other words, it took that variable, which we had the value name stored in it, and showed it on the page. I could make it store a number instead. Make it store a number like 10. Okay. I have to hit OK. And I have to hit refresh. So now it's just going to tell me 10. So it can use it to store text and numbers. I don't really like alert. Alert's a good thing to use sometimes. Sometimes you can use it to find out exactly where in your code something's happening. But I'm going to change over here. I'm going to change this to console. I'm going to show you a different function that is less intrusive. Console.log. Console.log is a function that's built in that will, instead of showing an alert, it'll just pop out some text on the side in your console window. So I could type in, I could make this George again because it makes more sense since it's called George. And I can refresh this page and it'll put George in there. Now, if your users don't even have the developer tools on there, they'll have no idea that you did that. Okay, so console.log is great for developing an application because you can see some values, can report some values to you as the developer without reporting the values to everybody. Like if you did an alert, everybody sees that every time they go to the web page. So that's console.log. Those are two built-in functions. So we talked about values and variables. Let's talk about functions. A function is a group of code that does something, right? So I'm going to write a little function. I'm going to call my function, I'm going to call it square. Okay, I'm going to say square is equal to a function, and my function is going to take a number. I'm just going to call it x because that's what we call it. We don't have. So this is a variable. This variable x is a variable. We could call it y, p, m, q. We could call it del. We could call it bob. We could call it thing. We could call it anything we want. That value right there is a variable. And in JavaScript, you start in a function with these little squiggly brackets. Okay? And it could be as long or short as we want. So I'm going to make it a little bit longer just so that you can see that we can make it as long or short as we want. And then I'm going to type in x. I'm going to type in, y is equal to x times x, because that's how you square something. And then I will type in return x. Return y. Okay? So what we've done is created a simple little function, and you may not need to create a whole lot of functions for this course, okay? But it does help you encapsulate some code. So now we have a special function called square that we created. I'm just trying to show you that you can create your own function. We've got a special function that we created called square, and all square does is actually squares our numbers. All right. One of the crazy things about JavaScript, and actually many other modern languages, are that functions are actually variables too. So variables can store text, they can store numbers, they can also store functions. So we've given our function variable a name called square. And again, if we want this to be able to be utilized everywhere, we have to say var. So var is equal to square function x, whatever. All right. So now, in order to use that function, I'm going to type square, I'm going to type console.log, because I want to be able to see it. Console.log square, who has a favorite number they like to multiply with itself? Seven, maybe. Okay, everybody know what 7 times 7 is? What's 7 times 7? 49. Yep, okay. So now I refresh the page, and I can find out that in fact, 7 times 7 is 49, because it has executed my square function inside here and returned the value of 7 times 7, which is 49, and then displayed it on the page. Okay? All right. So we've done something. We still haven't done anything dynamic though to the page. All of this happens when the page loads. Okay? That's a problem. Because we want to start doing things to the page. We want to start changing things because that's the goal here, is to make web maps that are dynamic. When we click on the map, it does something. When we zoom in, maybe it does something. Or maybe when we click on a button, it updates the map. Okay, these are the types of things that we want to be able to do. All right, so in order to do that, we need to start interacting with the elements on the page. And the elements on the page themselves are also values. We can think of them as values, but there's a special type of value that's called an object. Okay, and an object is just a collection of other values. So an object is just a collection of values. So an object might have a width associated with it because there's an element on the page that's my picture. That element has a width associated with it, and so that is a value. The width is a value of the image element, and I can change that value using JavaScript. A particular element may have the ability to change something about itself dynamically. And we call that's kind of like calling a function. And so we call that when an object has a function, we call that a method. And technically, we've already used a method. So the console is an object, and .log is a method. It's a function that console performs. It will perform a .log. What that means is it writes it out to this computer screen. So any object, when we want to access one of its sub-pieces, one of the pieces of that object, we use this dot notation. So we could say George.eyes equals green. Okay, my eyes actually are green. But you would expect the JavaScript to then change my eyes to be green. Okay? But perhaps that value can't be changed. There are some times where you can't change the object's value. Can't change my eyes. But I may have a function that says George.eat. And then you give it a quantity, and then I would eat that quantity of food, okay? That'd be pretty funny. But on a web page, we might tell the document to do something, okay? Document dot, and that's what we're going to do right now. All right. So we want to get a hold of some element on the page. I think that we should try to get a hold of the value inside of the text. Okay. So for right now, I'm going to type in, I'm going to go up to the text input thing here and type in value equals, and then I'm going to type in 3, I'll type in 7. I refreshed the page actually. I put 7 right there. Is 7, how 7 appeared there? Okay. All right. All right. I want to get a hold of that value because I want to know what the user entered into that value. Well, I could type document. So document is an object. It's one of the objects that you'll use a lot as you work in web mapping. Document dot. There's a function called get. I'm horrible at spelling. It's called get element by ID. I'm just going to type in get element by ID. Is it all lowercase? No. It's not all lowercase. It looks like that. I'll hold that open for a second. I'll type it. I'll leave it there. I'll let you all type that out. Document.get element by ID. And then it's a function. It's a method. It's a specific type of function on the document object. I am going to ask it for a particular element, and that element is going to be this input. Well, I have to give it an ID because I don't have an ID yet. So let's call this ID equals number. That has to be in quotes, number. So here I'm going to say document.get element by ID number. And what it's going to do is get the element out of that number. And then I'm going to call this, user number. That's what the user put. And then now instead of squaring the number 7, I'm going to have it square the user number. And perhaps I should go up and change the value from 7 to something else so we can prove that it worked. Okay. All right, so here what I've done is I'm asking the document to run this function that will get a certain element called number and return that number into this value, into this variable. But wait, I made a little mistake. I'm asking it to square user number when user number is the entire element. I actually want just the value, so I have to say dot value. Okay, that's the attribute. When I refresh this, I get 100, so it worked. All right, so I'll leave it there for a second. And actually, let's take like a 10-minute break. I'll leave this open for the 10 minutes. So if you want to catch up, you can. See if I can. That should probably be the whole page, though. If you want to catch up, you can. And we'll come back at 2:25. And what we're going to do before we break up for class, because we still have a few minutes. We still have some time. What I want to do is actually make it so that when you press click me, then it does that. In fact, it's going to update. This is my div. It's going to update that. And when you press click me, it's going to put the answer there into the place that says this is my div. So think about how we could do that. Okay, what do we need to do in order to do that? It takes the knowledge of the thing that I mentioned earlier, an event. An event. So we need to write code to respond to a certain event. All right, 10-minute break here real quick. All right. So for those on the coast, can you still hear me on the coast?
I'm here today. I don't know if you still out.
Okay, I did send the test down, so we'll go over it. We'll go over on Tuesday. I sent it to Greg Carter, so if you could get it from him maybe on Monday. I don't know. Do you come in on Mondays?
I'll be on Monday.
Okay. So yeah, if you could get it from him on Monday. And then, well, actually, do you see those guys on Monday though?
Yeah, I'm in class.
Okay. Great. Look at that. I just saw that one. All right. So, yeah, like I said, we'll go over that on Tuesday. Next time we meet, I'm not going to go over it now, but you can look at, it's out of 40. So if you're not, I shouldn't say good at math, if you know how to do math, you should be able to figure out what your grade was. But also, if you can't figure out how that transfers into a letter grade, go on SOAR, and you'll see the letter grade that was assigned based on that. So basically, since it's out of 40, 4 and above would be an A. So that's how that works. All right. Oh, the number is how many you missed, not how many you got correct. Otherwise, that would be bad. All right. So we're going to continue through here, and we're going to set this up so that we're going to have it ready to create a map that does something next by the time we meet next time. Okay, so we've got our page right now. It doesn't do much of anything, but it does calculate this square based on what's in here. Okay, but still, when I change this to 100, if I refresh the page, it doesn't update. Okay, that's because every time the page is loaded, I get this value gets replaced and it's 10 again. Every time the page is loaded, so it's always 10. I want to wait for the user to press this button. Then, when they press that button, they're going to take this number 10, or whatever number they've put in there, square that number, and report that number back in this area right here that says this is my div. Okay, so we're going to do all that right now. So in order to do that, we need to attach an event. Okay, an event is something like a click. Okay, there's all sorts of valid events. Click is the most common though. But one of the clicks is just a mouse over. I mean, one of the events is a mouse over. In other words, we can mouse over a certain element and it would cause an event to fire. And we could put code in there that would do that. And that's, have you ever gone to a web mapping page where you move your mouse around the page and it's always reporting the latitude and longitude of your mouse? Okay, that's how they do that. They're watching that mouse over event, and every time that mouse over event occurs, they're reporting the current mouse position. So it's if you're moving the mouse anywhere on there, it's putting that there. Okay. All right. So we have to create what we call an event handler. It's going to handle an event. All right. I'll just type in JavaScript event handler. Okay, so here's some examples. We're mousing over this, and it's changing some text. We're mousing over this element, doesn't do anything, but we click this element, it keeps adding a bunch of stuff. Okay, so we can put event handlers right in line. Okay, but more often it's more useful to create these event handlers in our code. Okay, so in other words, we could add an event handler inside the text to do something, but then the problem is we don't have the full component of the JavaScript language to work with. We can only basically execute one command and then that's it. Okay, that's not as useful. It works much better if we have a function that we give it. In fact, it's not in this particular example. Let me just those are all nice, but let's find an actual event handler example. Okay, well, first of all, in order to understand that both concepts exist, I'll go ahead and show you both here. So let's say we have this button that we want clicked. We can put the handler right in here, like that was showing on that example. We could say on click equals, and then we give it the name. We could just say on click. We could say the name of a function. So we have to actually put the name of the function. Well, first we could just say alert. Let's do that as an example. Alert, you clicked. Okay, so that's a simple handler. Now look, I've made a mistake. You can't put quotes within quotes, so you can put single quotes though within quotes. All right. So now when I go to this page, I can hit refresh. I can hit this button, and there'll be an alert. I could make a function down here. So I can make a function down here, and I can call my function handle click. Okay. And my function doesn't have any input parameters. I'm going to move this alert you clicked. I'm going to move that down here. Okay. And then type in just the name of the function. Handle click. JavaScript is case sensitive. So now what I did was I said, okay, on the click, run this function, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to refresh that. I messed up somewhere. Oh, var, I have to say var handle click equals function, because I have to tell it that it's a function. So I'm going to hit refresh. Now when I click this button, nothing happens. Does not see it. All right. Okay, that didn't work. All right. So it's not. Oh, I know what's wrong. Sorry. Okay. So what happens when you're making a cooking show and you decide to make something a little bit different? Sometimes it doesn't work out. So you shouldn't have live taping when you do that. So I decided to do something slightly different to show you that you can create an event handler right in line with the HTML code, which is what we just did. But I forgot a few things because I was rushing, but it was easy because I fixed them, okay? So this on-click tag or attribute inside, it's an attribute, inside of the input tag will run. It'll run this function. And the reason why I need to have these little parentheses is because it's telling it that I want to run that function. So whenever you run a function, you need to have the parentheses. Usually, if there were any parameters to feed it, you'd put those parameters inside the function, okay? But since we don't have any function parameters, we don't have to worry about that, okay? So now it's going to run this. So what's happening is that when we click, it's telling it to go down here and run this function, which is just doing an alert, okay? All right, let's put it all together. What we want to do is take the handle click function and have it call the square function. So how do we do that? Instead of the alert, we want to call the square function. How do we call the square function? Type in square. S square. And what do we want it to square? I mentioned this before, maybe it didn't go. What do we want it to square? This number, right? We want to square that number. How do we get that number? Well, we've already done it once right here. See this? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut this, and paste it into our function. So our user number is going to be there. And in fact, you can chain together these commands. Block this out. So we've got user number equals document dot get element by ID, the number dot value. So that'll make user number equal to whatever number is in there. And then we're going to square that user number. Okay. All right. And for now, I'm going to console.log this. That value. Before I do that, let's just assign that a new, we'll just call that square out equals this, and we'll type in square console.log square out. So what's going on now, by the way, you don't need to have these semicolons at the end of each line. Sometimes it's just a habit that I do. It will prevent errors in some cases. Anyway. And using semicolons will allow you to actually put a bunch of commands on the same line. So you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. Now, whatever number I put into here, and I press click me, it will report in the console the value of the square. See how it's putting these numbers over here? Okay, those numbers were created by this simple code. So handle click goes through here, calls this function. This function is what logs out the square onto the screen. All right. So the last thing that we need to do is get it to adjust the value here. All right. Now, how do we get an element on the page? How do we do that? Because that's what we want to do, right? We want to get the element on the page and change it. Using the code that's already here, how do we get the element? How do we get an element on the page? We want to get a hold of that element because we want to change it. So do we already do that? Do we already get a hold of an element? Okay, this would be like a multiple choice test. Of these 3 lines of code, which one gets an element on the document page? That's hard to see, huh? More. All right, that's better. Of those 3 lines, which one gets an element and assigns it to a new variable? The first one. Yep. Good. All right. So I'm going to copy this line again. I don't want the value. I want the whole thing. I'm going to copy that line and put it right here. What I'm saying is document.getElementById. I want to put it in the div tag. I want to put it in the div tag. I called that tag div. So I need to go back down here and I need to feed the div tag. Whoops. Control Z. I'll just write D. I know I can spell that right. Okay. Output. I'll call this output tag. So that's where I'm going to put it. All right. We want to update the contents of a div using JavaScript. Now, we don't really know how to do that yet, but it does have the examples of that in the W3 Schools code. Let's look at that. So JavaScript. In fact, when I hit click me, it changes something. So that's the attribute that we want to update. It's called .innerHTML. So we go into here and we just simply say output tag .innerHTML. Oh, I copied the dot, so I get it twice. Equals what? What do I want to put there? I want to report the squared output value. Square out. Yep. All right, so now I go back to my page once I've saved it. Now I hit click me and that value is 100. If I say 400, that value becomes 160,000. If I put in 300, I get 9,000. Okay, it's really small. So let's say I want to go up here and change the style. I'll make the font size 300, and I want to make this one red now. 300 is too big. Never mind. 30. Let's do this again. And instead of saying this is my div, I'm just going to make it empty at the beginning. It's not going to have anything. Okay. So I hit click me. I get 10. Whatever number I put in there, I get some new values on the page. See that? Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to change this as my span to say does that make a little bit more sense? I don't know, number you want a square. Click me, and it squares it. All right, so that is the, that's the code that does this simple web application. Now I realize that today we didn't do any real web mapping at all, okay? But we're gonna get to that. This is the way, using this kind of code is the way that we would do things like update the contents of the map. That would, like let's say you can actually draw things on the map. Like, let's draw a circle on the map that represents everything that's within 100 meters of a certain location. Okay? You could do that dynamically. You could allow the user to click on the map and find those things that were within 100 feet of those areas. Okay. Now you might think that it would be, that it's, well, I should say this, well, anyway, you might think that it would be overwhelming at this point to create your own, say I've got these images. We could write code that whenever I clicked on this image and dragged it, it would actually move a map around, okay? But we don't have to write all that code. Somebody has written a bunch of code for actually placing a web map on the page. And that is what things like this are. And this is what we'll go over on Monday, okay? So we're gonna use this library called Leaflet. It's an API for interacting or for creating web map pages. So see this web map that's on here? The amount of code that's actually written on this page looks like, see if I can find the, yep. Here's, scroll down to the bottom of this page if it'll let me scroll. Okay, I'm going to view the source. So this is all the code that's written to do that whole page. Okay, and most of this is putting those stupid points, lines, and polygons on there. Okay, that's all this. So here's the web page. Most of the code was drawing this circle, this guy, and that guy. Actually, creating the slippery map is just this portion of the code. That created the slippery map. So you didn't have to write all the code that creates the slippery map. It does that. So you can place that kind of like you place an image on the page. We'll talk about how that's done. So what should you do before Monday? Well, I'm going to post these examples that I've listed. And this is what I want you to do. And I should write this out. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this page right here. Okay. All right. Oh, one thing I forgot to do, well, we'll do that on Monday, okay? So on Monday, I'll show you how to create the click handler here. So what we did was we created our click handler inline in the code. And another way to do that is in the JavaScript code, we could find this element. Then we could attach a function to the onClick attribute so that you could do it all programmatically. All right, we'll do that on Monday because we're getting kind of tight. But what I want you to do before Monday is to modify this this page to when you click on this button, it returns the page back to this state. In other words, the way that you test this is you type something in, you click me, and when I click this picture, you can change it. I don't care what the picture looks like. It'll be a picture of you or whatnot. When I click this picture, I want this to disappear. Okay. In other words, inner HTML, just set it equal to nothing. Quote, quote. Okay. Then it'll go back. And the other thing is this needs to be reset to 10. Okay. When you click this, and I actually don't care that you click that picture, but yeah, let's make it so you click the picture. All right, I'm not going to include this in the code, but this will be the first step. So I'm gonna go back. You'll have to type this in yourself. But watch, I can do on click, alert. I'll just say alert. I'll just say alert. So now I refresh this page. It's not working. Oh, I put it on the other one. Yeah, sorry, I put it on the wrong picture. But you could, oh, means it's time to end class. All right, right here. So now we go back here and we click on my picture and it says hi. You need to modify that so that it does something else. It calls a function that basically resets the page. So you could have the name of your function be reset page, and reset page would do what? What are the two things you need to have it do? Clear out the 1,000 or 100, whatever the red answer is, reset that to nothing, and you need to have it reset the value of the text box to 0. I mean to 10. Sorry, to 10. Now, yeah. All right, is there any questions about that assignment? I'm going to zip this page up, and so it'll look exactly like this on the course website. And so you can modify it, or you can build your own. It does not have to be this one. Yep. All right, any other questions? All right, and then Monday we'll start actually interacting with maps. Okay. That's it. Let me